You know, the nice thing about buying food for a man is that you don't have to laugh at his jokes.
I want this picture to be a commentary on modern conditions, stark realism, the problems that confront the average man.
But with a little sex.
A little, but I don't want to stress it.
Welcome back to Cocktail Cinema, folks, your weekly movie review podcast, where we pair craft cocktails with some of the greatest movies ever. As always, I am your first favorite bartender, third favorite author, Josh Price, and I'm joined by my co-host, Greg, and our producer, Shasti.
Well, hello.
This week, we are bringing to the table Sullivan's Travels. This is the film where the Coen brothers got the idea for the name of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? Mm-hmm. We decided to go with this because none of us had heard of it before, but it seems to have gotten a lot of acclaim in its day.
Sully, I just want to tell you that Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is going to be the greatest tragedy ever made.
Mm-hmm. And that line was not necessarily wrong, depending on how you look at it.
Right.
So this movie came out in 1941. It was directed by Preston Sturgis. It had a budget of $678,000 and a box office return of $1.2 million.
True, that seems huge for 41.
Right?
Doubled up.
Like
right.
I can't quite remember what Wizard of Oz did before that, but
That's a
I
lost
feel
episode.
Like, yeah,
I wish I could pull that
we'll get back to that someday. But
Good thing too.
I do want to say it's at least comparable if memory serves.
Yeah.
It just seems like a huge budget, almost 700,000 for 41. It seems like wow, they really put a lot of their eggs in this basket.
Yeah, and that's interesting considering like when this film opens, they're talking about making a $1 million movie,
right?
Like $1 million budget movie, and this movie didn't even have that much on its budget. So imagine how big of a production they were talking about.
True. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's called Sullivan's Travels for a reason. You know, I mean, he's all over the place, but he always ends up back. And I think that right off the bat, you get that you don't realize how funny the movie is kind of until, oh, we're back in Hollywood. I can't seem to get away from this place kind of thing, you know? And
I'm going to pause you there. Because this is one of those rare occasions where this is a relatively unknown movie today. So I'm going to give a real quick
you're right.
synopsis of the plot so that, you know, those of you who haven't seen it have an idea what we're talking about. So there's this big-time director who's our titular Sullivan. He's trying to make a movie about, you know, the hardships of life. It sounds like a Grapes of Wrath kind of movie called Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And the studio is trying to pressure him into making something a little more lighthearted, but he wants to get to, you know, the heart of man, really dig into people's troubles. So he decides he's going to live on the streets and ride the rail cars like a vagrant of the time and see what their life is like.
Tramp,
he sets out
quote,
with,
unquote.
what is it, 10 cents in his pocket?
10 cents, yep.
And the movie documents not only his journey doing that, but his emotional and personal journey coming to terms with the American condition, the human condition, during some troubling times.
And all of his cronies are saying, don't do it, make a fun comedy. And but it's weird how the tables turn in this movie quite often, actually, you know, because it goes from funny to realistic and trying to draw. I mean, the guy has no clue. And that's funny when the girl, Veronica Lake, goes into his home and is like, where's the swimming pool? You know, he's got everything there, you know, blah, 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 just stacks up. And it's a satire, true and true. You know what I mean? There's elements of a lot of things in here, but I mean, it's making fun of the modern man and making fun of, not the modern man necessarily, but the aristocrat, the higher ups, the one percenters. You know?
Well, and I'm glad you brought up that it's a satire because the other hand of satire is addressing social issues.
Right.
And for a movie that's 80 years old, this movie is very relevant today. You know, it addresses, you know, not just, you know, the plight of the poor and the plight of the homeless, but also the disconnect between Hollywood and the average person.
Yeah.
Capitalism against your everyday man.
We talk here and there. We talk here and there
exactly.
about how Hollywood doesn't seem to understand the movies they're making.
Yeah.
And this movie understands that. And it tries to get to the core of why. And it's I was surprised by this film. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, there were certain elements. Like we talked, you know, obviously this movie's connected to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou, the Coen Brothers movie that we just did. This should come out right after probably. But Like even in black and white, there's certain scenes that I think that they took from this movie into that, like the opening scene where he's not the opening scene, but when he's got his satchel and a stick and stuff, and it's that kind of that wide shot. I mean, it's black and white, but it holds like you're there. Like it's got that glistening effect, like in the gold trees from this other movie, and a few other ones like that. But I don't think the movie was supposed to kind of have that flair. You know, it's definitely more of a think piece, sorta. You know what I mean? It's got elements of, like I said, a lot of different things from camera work to the banter's hilarious. You know, I think a lot of it goes, Shasi and I were talking before, and a lot of it goes kind of unnoticed in today's day and age because it's not meant for it doesn't perk up our ears the way they're speaking.
Right.
Their comedy is not the same as it is today.
Very situational. Like I disagree and say that right off the bat, this movie is slapstick comedy. You know, like you're saying, it's kind of hard to pick up at, like, it's not like Step Brothers.
Right.
You know what
exactly,
I mean? It's not
different.
It's not dick and fart jokes. It's situational humor that's like, I think kind of goes over your head if you're kind of, you know what I mean? We're obviously conditioned to like modern films and covering a lot of those and touching base on it's just very interesting to see. And also, the movie is just like super meta as far as, you know what I mean? Sullivan wanted to set out to make, you know, a real gritty movie and doesn't want to make a comedy. And then they end up doing what they're not trying to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And film movies within movies,
Right.
and your classic road trip, and a main character without a name. Those are like three elements for movies that we love covering.
Right.
Yeah.
And if we want to tie it back to the movie that gets its name from this, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is a road trip movie.
Sorry,
It's a road trip movie. It is based on a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
And it's also a comedy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is easy to imagine that if Sullivan's Travels took place in the real world, the movie they would have made would have been something like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
For sure.
Yeah.
And it really makes you respect both of these movies more. I think I know we try to look at films individually, but just for a moment, I'd like to mirror them.
Right.
Because we do try to find those moments in film history that are important that sometimes go overlooked. And this is definitely one of them.
Yeah, agreed.
This shows, you know, there are still parts of kind of this forgotten era of film that are affecting movies today. We're talking about a movie that really wasn't big outside of its time.
Right.
Like it was a hit.
Yeah. But you have, you know, other actors in movies that are over.
Right.
Cary Grant and... you know,
this director this director made 3 movies that year. And one of them overshadowed the other 2, and it was Ladies' Eve. So even with as successful as this was, it gets forgotten because Ladies' Eve was kind of his big moment for that year.
Think about that again. You said he did 3 movies that year. What other director... Now, we talked about, you know, time and how that kind of correlates from then to now. What other director's doing 3 movies in a year that's going to spike like these, I mean, with these kind of budgets? You know, I mean, it's really tough to do, and to be able to get a clear, concise point across on every one of them is even harder to do because compartmentalizing each movie has got to be such a mind f. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and basically, if you want to put it in like a more modern perspective, it'd be like if this director put out Donnie Darko and Schindler's List in the same year, and still did another movie.
And a third, right?
Yeah, right.
Doesn't even matter at that point.
So it's impressive.
Yeah, it
you know,
is.
and in a time where they were cranking out movies in weeks, not months or years.
Yeah.
So the foresight to have this is a rather complex tale being told. Like there's a point probably 2/3 of the way through where you feel like the movie's wrapping up.
Right.
You know, Sullivan's learned his lesson, you think, and then he learns another
Then
lesson.
he really learns his
very
lesson.
brother were out there.
He went looking for trouble and he finally found
tell
it.
you that old brother were out now.
No, but he finally found it. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? He found what he was looking for. He didn't. He's not in. You know.
No safety net.
Yeah, exactly.
There
He's
comes
outside
a
of
point,
Hollywood
and that I think you're right. We shouldn't spoil that part.
Yeah,
But
okay.
there is a point where he has no safety net, and he actually does have to live the life that he spent the last however long trying to live. This life of the forgotten lower class American.
and it
He very much so
twist
gets
his brain.
forgotten.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, thinking about that, like, do you ever put yourself like in his shoes, how scary that would be to go in from a life of excess and luxury to like being forgotten. There's no one to help you, and you're on hard labor.
And I don't think this really spoils anything, but it's after the hardships that he finally faces for he ends up not making the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's I think that's he got what he wanted. Be careful what you wish.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I think he learned the right he learned the lesson he wanted to learn the first time,
right way,
and not
but
to,
then
not the
after he has that,
and not to
real
exploit
hardship.
the idea of homeless people and living in shelters and everything.
And it's funny because that all happened. The movie shifts when he's doing a good deed. He thought he learned all he needed to learn, and he's like, and I found it funny because it's like, here's $5. I know $5 is $5 and 41, but it's like, still like they're excited, but like, what are you really doing to help them? You know what I mean? It's just it's one of those things. That's what it adds to the satirical feel of the film. It's just like, you didn't do enough. Now we're gonna get you. Your penance has not been fulfilled, sir. And
right, and they're the lesson he ultimately learns, because this is still the time period where it was like a book report. At the end of the movie, we were told what the lesson we learned was. Yeah. And he goes, I want to give these people a laugh because that's all some people have.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
At the end, you know. It's just,
and I mean, without knowing exactly what year that came out, similar time period.
Yeah.
This is like between Great Depression and World War II, pretty much, right?
Yeah. This is right before, a couple years before we enter the war.
I'm pretty sure, Jimmy Stewart was still huge in this time area. It was like he's one of the main ones.
Right.
But
yeah, I think era of the Western, and then this comes out.
Yeah.
And that's also something to consider, is this place in its own time.
Right. I was trying to kind of correlate a few ideas from Shazzy. Oh, Brother, We're Out Thou.
I just want to tell you that, oh, brother, we're out now.
And in this film, Sullivan's Travels, I was trying to really kind of find a way that the water kind of linked things together, because it seemed like there was such a big part of that movie. And there's certain aspects where, like the pool scene, everybody's dunked in there, and then towards the end, there's that kind of, swamp scene and stuff. So I was really trying to link them up, and I don't think that they're completely. Obviously, they're not tied to the hip, but I mean, I understand where the Coen brothers got this idea, and and they're so intelligent, and like they think so outside the box, where they're able to put anything together.
Well,
But
I think
there's a few things in this movie that I think hit. And
if you want to find a tie with the water between the two films, it's most likely to be just the concept of cleansing.
Yeah.
So
even in murky water, like the swamp water.
Yeah. So when water is introduced both times in "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," it's used as a cleansing thing. Like the first time, it's because Pete and Delmar are having their sins washed away, and then the second time, Everett is being forcefully baptized by the flood.
Right.
And everything is getting washed away in the valley. And in this film, when water is introduced, it's the first point in Sullivan's journey where he starts to see the other side of things, because he realizes that this girl that's come on this journey with him, that he's met by happenstance, has been kind of trying to struggle to break into Hollywood and become an actress, and things just didn't come easy, they didn't come at all. And it's the first time that mirror cracks for him, where maybe life isn't as simple as I'd like it to be.
And she also tries to give back right away when she first meets him at a little coffee shop.
Yes. Yeah, she well, I think this is as good a point as any.
I was like, come on,
there you go, ding, ding, ding.
To tell you the name of this drink. So
thirsty, Josh.
The location where our protagonist and his compatriot meet is a little diner, and the slang term for it at the time was an owl wagon. So today's drink is an owl wagon. This is more or less a coffee-based drink. It is an ounce of Irish cream, 1 ounce of cherry brandy, 2 ounces of coffee. We're going with cold brew today.
Nitro.
2 dashes of our cherry bitters and 2 dashes of our favorite Aztec bitters. Give it a quick stir over the rocks, and there you have the Owl Wagon.
That's nice.
Right? It's
subtle.
Very. You know, it's not something that's exploding on your tongue, but it is a very pleasant, sippable experience. Much like our opinions.
Right. And I don't do coffee, like, ever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's it's good stuff.
I drink coffee by the 32 ounce, so.
No, you drink espresso by the 32 ounce. I seen it.
Yeah. Well, how do you think I became your favorite bartender? No, I think it balances itself out really well. And, you know, when you consider, you know, the time period and the people that would have been frequenting an Owl Wagon, they would have been, you know, the type that would have liked to kick back with, you know, an Irish coffee or a little bit of Bailey's in their coffee.
It seemed that way because, you know, she's nameless in this movie, but Veronica Lake, she was on her way out. You know, she's had enough with the Hollywood life. She's I think that's kind of cool that they left her unnamed, because she was just another nameless actress trying to make it happen in Hollywood. I think that was another thing that kind of tied into the balance or drama satire that they're kind of going for. But I thought she was amazing in this movie.
I agree.
And I think she's smoking hot. Let's just get that out of the way. For 41.
Well, Veronica Lake was definitely a I don't want to say femme fatale, but a recognizable beautiful face in Hollywood at the time for 40 years. Yeah. You know. Nothing as big as like Murder on the Nile or whatever, but or Death on the Nile, but definitely someone that it was a household name.
Yeah, right. And I think that the name of Sullivan's Travels, I think that Sullivan's Travels does not happen without Veronica Lake.
I agree.
You know, the whole movie, I feel like I think she's more the main character than anything else. Like she's driving, she's the one pushing, she's the one accepting and trying to have growth. When she's already accepted her spot, and for her to kind of still be like, hey, I'll be homeless with this shit. I don't got nothing to go back to, you know.
Right.
And I'll go back to the East Coast.
Well, and I'm gonna push back a little bit on your view of her being nameless because she's just a nameless actor. Like I see your point, but I think we are intended to see this film through Sullivan's eyes, and to him, it doesn't matter what her name is. All that matters, she's his manic pixie dream girl. Yeah. Right. Doesn't matter who she is. Everything she does gets him where he needs to go. So,
but I don't think without her ferocity and her,
I
own struggles that he would even have paid any attention. The fact is, she wanted to buy him eggs and bacon. We're talking about, you know, millionaire or whatever you want to call a director, and then she's like, I'm on my way out. I got nothing. Here's some eggs and bacon.
Oh, I definitely agree, but I also think she's Kirsten Dunst in Elizabethtown.
I hate Kirsten Dunst.
She's I love Elizabethtown, so we're gonna have some problems. But kind of that OG, spunky, self-sustaining, independent woman who doesn't have a growth arc, doesn't have a story arc, is only there for the advantage of the main character. This is absolutely a woman that would have been written into any number of films like Elizabethtown, like Garden State. And it's interesting to see that trope crop up so early in film when the term wasn't coined for another 50 years.
Well, don't tell me she doesn't have arc. Because she literally went from woman to man back into woman.
Moving on.
Woman into little boy.
Moving on.
I thought that was funny though. They're like, nobody's gonna believe you're a little boy. Look at you.
You're Veronica Lake. Everyone knows you.
You're right.
You're like Britney Spears of the 40s.
No, I think both viewpoints are valid. I just think mine is more valid because it's mine.
right. And that's to be expected.
No, I actually hadn't thought about it that way. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I mean, what's another cool scene? That race car scene at the beginning.
Yeah,
really cool scene. That little 13-year-old pulls up and they're trying to outrun them.
The party bus,
and they're all bored because they're doing
land yacht.
Yeah, like you said, slapstick, and that's like in a physical comedy and all that kind of stuff. It was a nice way to kick that thing off for sure.
Well, and it's interesting. like looking at it, I can recognize it now since we did Seven Samurai. They pulled a very similar trick to the samurai running down the hill at the camera, where they've got that wide lens, but you can tell they're way back, so it makes the car look like it's going comically faster than it really is. And I'm sure they sped the film up a little bit for effect, but it's really cool to see those tricks now that we know what we're looking for in their original time period.
Yep, absolutely right. 100%.
Yeah, I was stoked. I watch most of these movies like standing in front of my TV with a bag of chips or something, and I was over the moon for this one. I like jumped up on my bed, and, like, it happened again.
Yeah,
like I love being able to see those things transition across film,
and how it's Seven Samurai years and years, and they're still using them today. And if we're talking 41, still being used. It's cool. It's a cool movie.
Yeah, and so I just kind of want to throw this to the table because I really wasn't sure how they did it. So there's a scene where Sullivan and Veronica Lake are kind of walking at night, and they're very clearly on a set, but there's a lake behind them, and you can tell it's real water, but the set behind them is a matte wall, is a flat wall. How do you think they would have pulled that off? Like, did they just put a pool in the set and like build a facade up to that level?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, then mess with the that. Yeah, that I don't know. I mean, I really don't know.
It's a moment of like absolute forced perspective. So let me set the scene for those of you who haven't seen the film. Nighttime, the stars are way in the back, and you can in today's eyes you can see that it's a wall, and then much closer there's water and it's moving. You can tell that it's real water, and then your closest distance is your actors who are still in full frame, so you can see their whole bodies, you can see them walking, and it looked like they did a really good job of forcing this image that they're on a beach or on a lakeside. But for the life of me, I can't figure out how they got this shot unless they built a pool. We'll
go with that. I'm having trouble remembering that part.
It's $600,000 budget,
Maybe and 41.
Maybe they had the money for
they
it.
got the excavator out.
Right.
It'd be really funny if it was the same pool.
Or just like black tarp, and they were just waving. It wasn't real water.
You're right.
Just like
That's even more impressive. No, it was just one of those things that stuck out to me. It's like I tossed it over my head the last couple of days, and it's the only answer I can come to.
I don't know.
And it highlights some of the obstacles that, like, filmmakers have always kind of had the same obstacles, but we have better technology and better access to certain places and things now. So sometimes, filming Bayside is easier to do in person now, whereas back then almost everything was on a set. So they had to be much more creative in how they suspended your disbelief, and they did a good job here. It's modern eyes, it took 80 years to be able to see that's a set.
Yeah.
So it's impressive on the production side.
Amen.
That's kind of where my notes come to end.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to talk anymore about this movie without really spoiling the major moments.
Yeah, I mean,
Greg, you got anything else that kind of?
No, I mean, I think we went through them. I mean, it's tough to say spoil when it's made 80 years ago, but so I'm not too worried about it. But
yeah, fair.
No, I mean, I think overall it's well done. It achieved what it was set out to achieve. The director did a great job, and especially did 3 movies that year. So I mean, hats off to him, and just goes to show you like the small things like from the past can springboard the future and future imagination, and that's kind of why I like doing these shows with you guys. It's all encompassing. You can draw back from this era to that era to put it into modern day fruition, and just kind of see the growth of the art in all facets. So
I like really visiting these little gems because we do have so many shining moments in film history that are obvious. And something like this,
I thought you hated The Shining.
Deserves. Okay,
I'm just kidding. I had to.
We'll maybe we'll go back to that someday. We'll give that a redux. Yeah. Kubrick was known for that. I think finding something like this, and in the way that we did, makes it that much more special, because it's like we consider ourselves students of film, and coming across something like this feels like we found that little speck of gold that we're always panning for.
Right.
And it's a shout out to my future brother-in-law for bringing up Ladies' Eve several days ago, just by coincidence. It was interesting to see that director, what's his name, Preston Sturges, was able to pull off such monumental moments in film and still be overshadowed by his own work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's got to be kind of a weird feeling.
Yeah.
Great shit.
It's very Spielbergian. But that said, I think it's probably time we start stepping into our final segment here. Let's take a look at what the critics had to say about Sullivan's Travels.
Oh, my Lord.
Oh, man. All right, so we have a 100% tomato rating from critics and 89 from the audiences. Now, what we're looking at here is that critic score.
Yep.
Grego, my favorite question of the night, was this movie overpoured or underpoured?
You know, it's tough to say on this one because it led to one of, in my opinion, one of the better to best movies of our era. I think it's an overpour. I like what they achieved. I like what they're trying to get across. I think it's an overpour. Personally, I'd probably put this on like the 83 mark. 83.
Okay. Shasti?
Yeah, I think it's slightly overpoured. I'd rate it higher than that, though. I'd put it in the 90s. I don't put too many movies in the 90s, but I think I'd give it a 91.
Cool.
I think as a comedy and a drama, and touching, spending enough time to touch on both of those things, it's as good as any other one. And like I said, anytime it's a movie within a movie, it just becomes next level, like meta-wise. You know what I mean? It's like this director in the movie was setting out to not make a comedy, make a gritty movie about the poor people of America after the Depression. It's essentially exploiting poor people and making a movie about it. And Sturges throughout this ended up making a comedy that exploited poor people.
Yeah.
Like the last scene in the movie, this isn't giving anything away either, but it's literally like all like your everyday man in the theater just laughing maniacally. And he's there with them.
Yeah.
But I think it's next level.
It ended up exploiting the rich class more so.
I mean,
theoretically, the movie kind of ends before that, but theoretically,
right. I think the film. I think what he was doing in the film exploited poor people. That's what he wanted to set out to do in the movie, and everyone told him no. And in the end, Peter Sturges ended up doing that exact same thing, which to me puts it in the 90s. On top of every other reason.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure I gave 91 to Oh Brother Where Art Thou.
You might have.
I think I did.
You might have. I'm gonna say this is an overpour. I mean, it's hard to. I mean, it'd be really hard to say this was an underpour, given it's a 100 rating. I think it's overpour. It just isn't. It's a fuzz out of my top 100. I think so. I'm gonna give it an 89. But I do want to say, if we were talking about just movies about making movies, this is top 3. I'm not sure what the rest of that top 3 would be, but I can tell you movies like Mank that came out recently, or just pick them. There's dozens of movies.
Cinema Paradiso. We did Zisa recently.
Truman Show.
There's so many movies, and the Academy just
Yep.
comes all over themselves about movies, movies about making movies. So there's so many of them. And I think this is top tier version
Absolutely.
of that.
Especially for the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Still
absolutely.
holds in my mind. It's just hilarious.
Yeah.
It was very funny. The comedy hits, the emotion hits, and
I'm like laughing. Like I normally just like breathe through my nose, and smile, and like look at my phone. Like I'm like laughing out loud at this movie. I had so much fun.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, it was. I'm really glad you stumbled across this film when you did. This was. It's rare for me to say that a movie I watched in my adult life has brought more fulfillment to me than I had before. So, thank you.
Hell yeah. You're welcome.
Audience, this is the part of the show where we like to ask, what's your rating? Drop down into them comments and let us know, was this an overpour, an underpour? do you agree with any of us specifically? Have you seen this film? Have you heard of it? That said, if you'd like to get even more involved, y'all know where to find our Patreon down in that description. As for that, Greg, Joe Shasti, I love you both. Audience, we love you all. We gotta say goodbye.
You wouldn't be trying to lead me astray, would you?